Just when you thought you've heard it all of a sudden, something pops up on the news cycle and you like, well, I guess I don't know what to say, man. I'm at a loss for words. When Dumb and Dumber, that's right, attempt a coup d'etat on an entire Haitian island. That's right. Gavin Weisenburg and Thomas Tanner, 20 and 21 years old, planned an elaborate coup d'etat to take over Gonave Islands, the Gonave Island right outside of Haiti, which has a population of about 87,000 people. They were going to take over this island in their elaborate plan. They were going to unalive all the men on the island and turn all the women and children into S-blank-X slaves. That's right. They were basically going to create an Epstein Island of every pedo's wildish imaginations and dreams. These dudes were about to take it to the next level. And look, when I first saw this story break on the news cycle, I saw the two dudes' faces and I'm like, Texas, these two dudes, youngsters, what kind of over-exaggeration is this? Why did they really arrest these dudes? Is this even a case? And once I started researching it, because the Department of Justice and the feds, sometimes they jump the gun, and they have had some really bad track records of going after people when we find out later that they hook these people up or these organizations up unjustly. We can go back to one, and the more you look into some of the cases that the feds had their hand involved in, including the Waco massacre, you start questioning if there was something more to the story than what they're telling us, and if we can even believe what they're telling us, because we just don't know. And by the way, that's a whole nother case that we may cover later on, is the Waco massacre, and what happened with that. There's a lot of interest in that. You got Bill Clinton, you got Janet Reno, you got David Koresh, Branch Davidians. It's just this whole elaborate, interesting thing on what goes down there. And there's a lot of other connections on people who showed up on site that wound up getting federal charges as well. And they said that they were connected and they showed up. I think maybe even a serial killer showed up to the site of the Branch Davidians when the feds and ATF was taken over. But when I first saw this case of Gavin Weisenburg and Tanner Thomas, that's what my first initial reaction was, that these two dudes are getting hooked up on something that may be over-exaggerated. But when I looked at it, I'm like, nah, it's not over-exaggerated. These two dudes are done. They literally were planning a coup d'etat on a whole island. And hear me out on this. I thought about it for a second and I said, are they really as dumb? Are they really Dumb and Dumber? Or are they just evil masterminds like Pinky and the Brain? I don't know. But here's the story. So Gavin Weisenburg and Tanner Thomas came up with this elaborate scheme to go to the Gonave Islands and take over so that they can make it their own personal islands. It was literally going to be their own personal Jeffrey Epstein Island. And these two dudes didn't just plan this out and in a random conversation while they were drinking too much, because that's what I initially thought. I said, did somebody overhear these two dudes? They were knocking them back. Oh, man, dude, it'd be so awesome, man. Freaking take over an island, man. Man, it'd be so awesome, man. They got such awesome babes there, man. We're going to take over their island, man. Oh, wait a second. We got to get rid of all their dudes that are there. Oh, yeah. Bro. We just take care of the guys, man. We get people to help us, man. And we're going to take over this freaking island. So this case is absolutely insane. But I want to go straight to the source, which is the Eastern District of Texas, the Department of Justice website for the United States Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Texas. And I want to go over some of the notes that I read there, and then we'll talk a little more about it. And the article is directly from the Attorney General's office, and it's North Texas men indicted in Eastern District of Texas for an international unaliving kidnapping scheme. It says in Plano, Texas, it says 2 North Texas men have been charged in relation to a plot that included invading an island off Haiti, unaliving the men of the island, and using the women and children as S-blank-X slaves, announced U.S. Attorney J.R. Combs. Gavin Rivers Weisenburg, 21, of Allen, and Tanner Christopher Thomas, 20, of Argyle, Texas, were named in a 2-count indictment returned by the federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Texas, charging them with conspiracy to unalive, maim, kidnap in a foreign country and the production of children, blank wordography. Information presented in court indicates that between August 24th and July 25, that's right, for a year's time, these dudes were planning this. And this was something I struggled with when I saw, because I really thought that somebody overheard these dudes talking in conversation, or maybe they sent a stupid email back and forth joking with one another. But they planned this for a year, and it wasn't no joke, as you're going to find out. Weisenburg and Thomas are alleged to have conspired to recruit and lead an unlawful expeditionary force to the island of Gonave, which is part of the Republic of Haiti, for the purpose of carrying out their R-word fantasies. Weisenburg and Thomas plan to purchase a sailboat, firearms, and ammunition, then recruit members of the District of Columbia area homeless population to serve as a mercenary force as they invaded Gonave Island and stage a coup d'etat. Weisenburg and Thomas intended to murder, unalive, all of the men on the island so that they could then turn all the women and children into their S-X slaves. This is absolutely insane, man. And when I read this, I said, well, let me look further into it, because this is what the district attorneys, and listen, as an ex-convict, hey, listen, sometimes you can't trust no district attorney, man. You know they can lie too, they people. As an ex-convict and somebody you've been to prison, you learn that there are good law enforcement agencies and good law enforcement officers, and there are also bad ones. So they can lie too. So as an ex-con, I have to come at this with a way that I'm thinking to myself, maybe this ain't true. Maybe these dudes are really getting hooked up, but for some other reason, they know something they shouldn't know. But the more I researched, the more I realized these two idiots deserve what they're getting, because they actually planned this. This was actually dangerous. It was so bad that Gavin Weisenburg, he took it upon himself to join the Texas Firemen's Academy to try to learn more about firefighting and emergency management, so that when they took over the Gonave Islands, that he would be able to manage the crisis accordingly. They were taking classes so that they can prepare themselves for this. He also traveled to Thailand, Gavin Weisenburg, so that he can learn about sailing. But when he got to Thailand, the sailing class cost so much money he couldn't afford it, so he came back. But he made an attempt to learn how to sail so that he had the proper knowledge of sailing, because he was going to be on an island. They were going to rule over this little island of theirs in their little fantasy that they had. Tanner Thomas actually joined the Air Force. He was in the Air Force. And that's how Washington, D.C. all of a sudden gets tossed in here, because he got transferred from Germany to Washington, D.C., where he planned on recruiting the homeless population in Washington, D.C. to bring them with them as their paramilitary force that was going to be, man, this dude was bringing homeless people and zombified people who were on K2. Can you imagine? You ever seen the people? Look, hold on. Let me show you. This is the people he was going to bring. You know the videos you see where they slunched over like this? They were going to bring a zombified army. Got some K2, man. These people who came to get off drugs, that's who they were going to bring with them, man. And so they really thought it through, but they didn't think it through. Their paramilitary force was basically zombies. This is crazy, man. Somebody can make a movie out of these two fools. So let's get further into it. So he joined the Air Force. He gets transferred from Germany. Tanner Thomas does. And that's where he's going to recruit the homeless people. So it says Weisenburg and Thomas undertook numerous overt acts in furtherance, and that's the key word, in furtherance of their invasion plan, including making operational and logistical plans. Once you go from talking about something to taking classes and actually implementing strategies and strategic implementations to take over an island, you went to the next level. And that's what Tanner and Gavin did here. And so logistics plans, they even took Haitian Creole language classes. They took Haitian Creole language classes so that they can know some of the words to communicate with some of the people when they got there. Recruiting others to join the invasion plan and researching and enrolling in schools to acquire skills relevant to the invasion plan. Thomas even enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, like we already spoke about, to get, further training. Weisenburg and Thomas are also charged. So before you feel bad for these two fools, Weisenburg and Thomas are also charged with production of CP in a related count in the indictment. They supposedly, allegedly, filmed and coerced a minor to perform acts on film, and they found the video footage, and they're also charged with that. That alone should put them in prison for the rest of their lives, much less these other crazy charges. These dudes are going to the feds too, probably. If convicted of the federal conspiracy to commit unaliving in a foreign country, Weisenburg Thomas face up to life in federal prison, like we just said. If convicted of the federal prosecution of CP charges, both face at least 15 to 30 years in prison. That should be a life sentence. Man, if you manufacturing and producing CP, that's life. That's it. That's the only, ain't no other option, life. The case is being investigated by the FBI, the U.S. Air Force of Special Investigations, the Salina Police Department. The case is being prosecuted by the Assistant U.S. Attorney, Ryan Locker. A grand jury indictment is not evidence of guilt, blah, blah, blah. We know all that. These dudes are done. Bam! They're going to bring the hammer, the strong arm of the law. These dudes are done. These dudes ain't about to see like no daylight no time soon. They going to the feds. Man, these dudes might wind up in Supermax, ADX in Colorado, because what they did is just that crazy. I mean, I even went to start thinking deeper, because y'all know that I like to do a lot of research, and I'm interested in a lot of things. Man, I was thinking about, even though they're crazy and this is really far-fetched, I started thinking, well, is it really that far-fetched? Because think about it. In Jamaica, in Port-au-Prince, the inmates have escaped prison, and they've literally taken over the city. Inmates now run parts of Jamaica. A coup d'etat was successful in Jamaica. So these dudes were probably looking at that Jamaican coup d'etat and said, hey, look, we're going to do our own coup d'etat in the Gonave Island. And it's crazy. But look back in history of islands and groups and colonies of people who did some crazy stuff. You know what I mean? What's the dude who had all the people on the islands? They drank all that stuff, and they basically all unalived themselves, you know, with that for that pastor. So there's been some crazy stuff, and they got these Indian gurus who have also been involved in doing some stuff like that too. So I was like, man, these two dudes are crazy, and they 20 and 21 years old. These dudes are young, you know, but they had young idle minds, and they came up with a sick and evil scheme, and now they're gonna pay for it with their freedom. And what say you? Do you think a life sentence is? I think a life sentence is appropriate just on the fact that they filmed a minor. That alone. So all this other stuff is just cherries on top of the cake. These dudes are done. They ain't never gonna see no freedom again. This is one of the craziest stories I've ever seen. But that's the type of stuff that you get on the Pen and the Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison related content channel on YouTube. So like and subscribe and hit that bell notification so you can be updated every time I drop a new video. And you never know what it's going to be about. It could be about a crime that's going on in the world, or it could be about one of those crazy prison characters that I met while I was in prison. So I've got all kind of interesting stuff, and we got more unique stuff coming out, and we're starting to hit these lives, man. So you know what I mean? Join on board if you're not on board with the community at the Pen and the Shank. And you know what? Let's get it.